The room that shows you how you'll die. The scream echoed through the empty halls of the Willow Inn just before sunrise. It was sharp, sudden, and so full of terror that even the night clerk, who had worked there for years, froze in place behind the front desk. The sound came from the second floor, room 209. By the time he reached the door, everything had gone silent. He knocked once. No answer. The air felt heavy, still, and cold, even though the summer morning was already warming up outside. When he finally unlocked the door, the television was still on, humming faint static. The curtains were drawn, and a single lamp flickered by the bedside table. The guest, a man named Daniel Reeves, was lying on the floor, pale and motionless. His eyes were open, fixed toward the mirror across the room, a tall old-fashioned one mounted on the wall near the bed. The reflection, though, was not the same. In the mirror, Daniel was standing, not lying down. He looked alive, terrified, as if watching something coming for him. And then, as the clerk stared, the reflection blinked. He stumbled back, hitting the wall, his heart pounding. When he looked again, Daniel's reflection was gone, leaving only his lifeless body on the carpet and his frozen expression of horror. That was the night the police came. They said it was a heart attack, but when they reviewed the security footage, the reflection in the mirror didn't match Daniel's body at all. It showed him standing, reaching toward the glass, as if trying to escape something inside it. After that, the motel closed room 209 for good. Or so they claimed. Years passed, and stories spread through Knoxville. Stories about that room. Some said it was cursed. Others said the mirror had once belonged to a funeral home that burned down decades earlier. But everyone agreed on one thing. If you stayed in room 209, you saw how you would dim. In 2018, a college student named Rachel Moore heard about the story from her friend, who worked part-time at the front desk. She didn't believe in curses. She thought it was just another internet legend, until she decided to prove it wrong for her horror podcast. That night, Rachel booked a stay at the abandoned Willow Inn. She brought her camera, her laptop, and one question she planned to answer. What really happens in room 209? When she found the room, the door was nailed shut. The numbers were faded, the frame warped. She hesitated for only a moment before prying it open with a crowbar. The smell of dust and old wood hit her first. Then came the cold. It felt like walking into a place that hadn't breathed in decades. Her flashlight flickered across the mirror on the wall. The glass was spotless, and as she moved closer, she thought she saw her reflection take a half step forward, just slightly ahead of her. She froze. Then, her reflection smiled. Rachel stumbled backward, her flashlight clattering to the floor. The sound echoed off the walls, sharp and hollow. For a split second, she thought it was just her imagination. The reflection must have flickered. Maybe the light played tricks on her eyes. But when she bent down to grab the flashlight, she noticed something chilling. The reflection hadn't moved. Her reflection was still standing upright, smiling faintly, even though Rachel herself was crouched down. A cold wave of panic swept over her. She forced a laugh, whispering to herself, "It's just old glass. That's all." But her voice didn't sound convincing, even to her own ears. Trying to shake it off, she began setting up her recording gear. The camera's red light blinked on, and the tiny screen reflected the eerie emptiness of the room behind her. "All right," she said, pressing record. "This is Rachel Moore, and tonight I'm investigating the legend of room 209, the room that supposedly shows you how you'll die." She spoke confidently, but her hands were trembling. "Locals say no one stayed here since the late 90s, she continued, pacing slowly. "Police reports describe strange visual distortions, but..." The lights flickered. Rachel stopped mid-sentence. The camera's display went black, then came back with static lines cutting through the image. Behind her, in the reflection, someone else was standing. At first, it was faint, just a shadowy outline. Then, it became clearer. A tall man in a hotel uniform, his face pale and expressionless. Rachel turned fast, shining her flashlight toward the mirror. Nothing. The room was empty. Her breath caught in her throat. She glanced at the camera again, and her heart skipped. The figure was gone, but on the playback, she could hear a faint whisper. "Don't look too long." She froze. Her hands were shaking now. She turned the camera off and stepped back toward the door, but the knob wouldn't move. It was jammed, like it had rusted shut. "Hello?" she called out. "Is someone here?" No answer, just the faint buzz of the light above her. Then she heard it, a slow tapping sound coming from inside the mirror. One tap, then another, then three. Rachel's pulse raced. She took a shaky step closer, unable to stop herself from staring. The mirror seemed to ripple slightly, as though it wasn't glass at all but a thin layer of water. Inside it, her reflection lifted its hand, not to wave, but to touch the glass from the other side. Her reflection's eyes changed, turning wide, terrified. It began mouthing something Rachel couldn't hear. Then suddenly, her reflection's head snapped toward the right, reacting to something Rachel couldn't see. Rachel turned her head slowly, dread crawling up her spine. Nothing was there. But when she looked back at the mirror, her reflection was gone, and in its place, she saw something else. A flicker of movement. Herself, years older, standing on a roadside in heavy rain, headlights approaching fast. Her reflection looked up in terror, frozen. Then, everything went dark. Rachel stumbled back, covering her mouth. The air in the room turned icy. She ran to the door, pounding on it, shouting for help. From the other side came a faint voice, the same one she'd heard whisper before. "You shouldn't have come back." Rachel's fists pounded against the door until her knuckles burned, but it didn't budge. The voice on the other side had gone silent. Only the hum of the dying light filled the air now. She turned back to the mirror, heart racing, but what she saw nearly made her knees give out. The reflection of the room wasn't matching hers anymore. The bed behind her reflection was neatly made. The curtains were open, showing sunlight outside. But the real window in the room was still dark, covered in grime. And standing in that bright, impossible reflection was the man in the hotel uniform again. This time, he was closer. His hand was pressed against the glass as if he wanted out. Rachel took a step back, whispering, "What do you want from me?" For a moment, the man's mouth didn't move. Then, as if struggling to speak, his lips formed the words, "Not me. You." Her stomach turned. The air felt thicker, harder to breathe. She stumbled to her camera, desperate to document what she was seeing, but the screen only showed static now. She tapped the lens, adjusted the focus, but the image refused to return. Then, in the white noise, came a faint voice. "Room 209. It was drawn out, almost like a recording played backward. Rachel's flashlight flickered again. She turned toward the sound, her pulse hammering, but the corner of the room looked darker than before, like the shadows had deepened. Something moved in that darkness, slowly, deliberately. She lifted the flashlight, but the beam stopped midway, like the air itself had thickened. The shadows pulsed once, and she could have sworn she saw the outline of herself, the same shape, same stance, staring back at her. "No," she whispered. "No, this isn't real." Then just as suddenly, the room went silent, completely. The buzzing light stopped. The static vanished. Even her own breathing felt muffled. In the mirror, a reflection began to move again, but this time Rachel didn't. The reflection leaned forward, eyes wide, lips trembling. It looked terrified. It pointed at her, slowly, and mouthed two words that made Rachel's blood run cold. "Behind you." She spun around, flashlight shaking, and for half a second, she saw something in the corner. A faint shimmer, like heat distortion in the air. Then the bulb in the flashlight exploded, plunging her into darkness. Rachel screamed, fumbling for her phone light, but when it came on, the mirror was empty again. The reflection, gone. The man, gone. Only her pale, trembling face stared back. She took a deep breath, trying to think. She needed to leave. She needed air. She tried the door again, still jammed. She kicked at it, cursed, then grabbed her crowbar from the floor. As she raised it to pry the door open, the mirror behind her flickered one last time. For a moment, she thought it was her flashlight reflecting off the glass. But no. In the mirror, Rachel was no longer in the room. She was outside, standing on a rainy highway, headlights rushing toward her. Exactly what she'd seen before. Her chest tightened. She turned around. The window was glowing faintly now, the reflection of approaching headlights. Her voice broke in a whisper. "Is this how I die?" From the mirror came a faint reply. Her own voice, echoing back. Yes, the sound of rain came first. But it wasn't raining. Rachel stood frozen in the middle of room 209, her heart hammering, watching the reflection of that storm unfold inside the mirror. Water streaked down the glass in her reflection's world, lightning flashing behind her mirrored self. In the real room, there was only silence and dust. Then she heard it, the low growl of an approaching engine. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside the mirror. Rachel stepped back, trembling. "This isn't real," she whispered. "It's just showing me something. It's not happening." But her reflection wasn't moving anymore. It just stood there on the mirrored road, drenched in rain, headlights growing brighter behind her. Rachel's breathing became shallow. The mirror began to pulse faintly, like a heartbeat. Each pulse sent small ripples across its surface, as if it were no longer solid glass, but liquid light. A voice came from behind her. Calm, male, familiar. "You shouldn't have opened this room again." Rachel spun around. The man in the hotel uniform was standing there, but now she could see through him faintly. His outline shimmered like mist. "Who are you?" she cried. He didn't answer at first. He just looked toward the mirror, sadness in his eyes. "I tried to warn them, all those years ago. The room doesn't show death. It invites it." "What do you mean?" Rachel asked, her voice cracking. "The moment you see it," he said softly, "it starts to happen. You can't stop it. The mirror isn't showing the future. It's pulling it closer." Rachel shook her head. No, that's impossible." He stepped closer, his figure flickering with every pulse of the mirror's glow. Everyone who's ever seen their reflection move ended up exactly where they saw themselves. Rachel's camera, long forgotten on the bed, suddenly switched back on by itself. The lens turned toward her, and on the tiny screen, Rachel could see the highway again, rain pouring, headlights blinding. The sound of the engine grew louder now, echoing through the room. Rachel's reflection in the mirror turned its head slowly, looking directly at her, eyes wide with terror. "Don't let it happen," she screamed, lunging toward the glass. But when she reached out, her hands didn't touch solid surface. The mirror gave way like water, rippling under her palms. Her fingers began to sink through, cold seeping into her skin. The man shouted, "Step back!" But his voice was fading, drowned by the roar of the unseen storm. Rachel tried to pull away, but something on the other side was pulling harder. The reflection, her other self, grabbed her hands, eyes full of fear. And then, everything went dark. The next morning, the front desk clerk at the abandoned Willow Inn found the door to room 209 wide open. The room was quiet. The camera was still recording, the red light blinking steadily. On the screen, you could see the empty room. The mirror stood untouched. But every few seconds, the reflection showed something else. A rain-soaked highway, flickering headlights, and a woman standing in the middle of the road, whispering something no one could quite hear. When police reviewed the footage, they heard her voice faintly through the static, repeating the same words over and over again. "Don't look too long. Don't look too long." And to this day, locals say that when the power flickers near the old Willow Inn, if you walk by the boarded window of room 209, you might catch a glimpse of her, Rachel, standing inside the mirror, waiting for the next person who dares to look.